Stepmom hid my birthday and favored her kid. I found out she lied about my dad to get custody and control our family. Okay, Reddit, you are not going to believe this, but I need to tell someone because I am still reeling from everything. I am Oliver, 22 years old, and for the past 5 years my life has been, well, complicated thanks to my stepmother Nancy. My dad, Richard, who is in his late 50s, married Nancy, who is in her early 40s about 5 years ago. Nancy has a daughter, Alexis, who is 16, and honestly from day one it has felt like Alexis is the only child in this family that Nancy actually cares about. Let me give you some background. My mom passed away when I was 16. It was really tough, obviously, for both me and my dad. We were a pretty close family, and losing her was like having the rug pulled out from under us. Dad and I leaned on each other a lot, and for a while it was just the two of us figuring things out. Then about 2 years after my mom died, my dad started dating Nancy. At first I was cautiously optimistic. I wanted my dad to be happy, and Nancy seemed nice enough. She was pretty, always put together, and she seemed to really like my dad. Alexis was quiet and kept to herself, which I thought was fine. We all tried to make it work. We did family dinners, tried to find common ground, the whole step-family thing. But it quickly became clear that Nancy and I were just different. She's very particular about things, very organized, almost to a fault. I am more laid back, I guess. And Alexis, well, Alexis is her mother's daughter through and through. Everything Nancy did revolved around Alexis. It started subtly. Like if we were going out to dinner, Nancy would always ask Alexis what she wanted to eat, what kind of restaurant she was in the mood for. My dad and I would just kind of go along with it. Then it progressed to things like chores. Alexis was barely expected to lift a finger, while I was suddenly responsible for half the housework, even though I was in my last year of high school and juggling schoolwork and a part-time job. It was the gifts, though, that really started to get to me. Christmas, birthdays, anything gift-related, it was always so obviously skewed towards Alexis. For her 16th birthday last year, Nancy and Dad threw her a huge party, rented out a hall, DJ, the whole shebang. She got a car, a brand new laptop, designer clothes, you name it. For my 21st birthday a few months before, I got a gift card and a generic cake from the grocery store. Seriously, a gift card. I know, gifts aren't everything, and I should be grateful for anything I get, but it was just so blatant. It felt like a slap in the face. I tried to talk to my dad about it a few times. He's a good man, my dad, but he is also kind of conflict avoidant. Whenever I brought up Nancy's favoritism, he would brush it off, say I was being sensitive or that I was imagining things. He would say Nancy was still adjusting to being a stepmom and that I needed to give her time. It had been 5 years. 5 years of feeling like I was constantly in second place in my own home. This year my birthday was last week, 22nd birthday. I wasn't expecting a huge party or anything, especially since I am an adult now, and honestly, after years of disappointment, my expectations were pretty low. But I was still hoping for at least a little acknowledgement. Maybe a cake, a nice dinner, a happy birthday wish, something, anything, nothing, absolutely nothing. My birthday came and went like any other day. No card, no cake, no mention of it whatsoever. It was like my birthday just ceased to exist in our household. Alexis, of course, got a new phone that week, just because, and Nancy made a big deal about taking her out for a special mother-daughter lunch. Did I mention that Alexis is constantly getting new clothes, new makeup, basically whatever she wants? While I am still driving the same beat-up car I had in high school and trying to save up for, well, anything really. I was beyond hurt. I was angry. I felt invisible. It was like Nancy was deliberately trying to erase me from the family picture. That night after my birthday, I was sitting in my room just feeling completely down. I decided, you know what, enough is enough. I am done being the quiet, overlooked stepson. I'm going to figure out why Nancy treats me this way. There has to be a reason for this blatant favoritism, right? It can't just be random cruelty. So I started digging. I know it sounds a little dramatic, like I am some kind of detective in a movie, but I was determined. I started with the internet, of course, social media. I looked up Nancy, Alexis, anything I could find. Nancy is pretty private online, not much public stuff. Alexis, typical teenager, lots of social media, but mostly just selfies and stuff with her friends. Nothing really revealing there. Then I started thinking about Nancy's past. She doesn't talk about her life before my dad much. She mentions her parents occasionally who live out of state, but that's about it. She never talks about exes or previous relationships or anything like that. It's like her life started the day she met my dad, which, in retrospect, is kind of weird, right? I remembered my dad mentioning once, early on in their relationship, that Nancy had been divorced. He didn't say much about it, just that it was amicable and that Alexis's dad wasn't really in the picture. Okay, red flag number one. Usually, if it's amicable, at least one parent is in the picture. So I started searching for information about Nancy's ex-husband. I didn't even know his name. Dad had never mentioned it. Nancy never mentioned it. It was like he was Voldemort, the man who must not be named. I tried different search combinations. Nancy's maiden name, which I vaguely remembered Dad mentioning, plus divorce, plus custody, plus Alexis's father. I struck gold pretty quickly. An article popped up from a local newspaper from years ago about a messy custody battle. And there it was, Nancy's ex-husband's name, Mark. I searched Mark's name and bam, more articles. Local news websites, court records, even some old social media stuff. And the story that unfolded, Reddit, you are not going to believe this. It was insane. Apparently Nancy and Mark had a really nasty divorce, like really, really nasty. Accusations of infidelity, financial disputes, the whole 9 yards. And the custody battle for Alexis was brutal. Mark was fighting for full custody, and Nancy was fighting back just as hard. And here's the kicker. According to the articles and court documents I managed to find online, Nancy accused Mark of, wait for it, emotional abuse towards Alexis. She painted him as this terrible, unstable father who was emotionally damaging their daughter. She even brought in expert witnesses, therapists, psychologists, the whole shebang to testify against him. And she won. She got full custody of Alexis, and Mark was basically cut out of Alexis's life. He was granted limited, supervised visitation at first, which was later terminated altogether, citing concerns for Alexis's emotional well-being. Reading this, I was floored. This wasn't the Nancy I thought I knew. This wasn't the sweet, put-together stepmom who just happened to favor her own daughter a little too much. This was someone who was capable of, well, manipulation on a grand scale. Someone who was willing to destroy someone else's reputation and relationship with their child to get what she wanted. And then it hit me. The favoritism, the constant doting on Alexis, the way she treated me like I was invisible, it all made sense. Nancy wasn't just favoring her daughter. She was overcompensating. She had probably convinced herself, and maybe even Alexis, that Mark was this terrible person, and now she had to be the perfect mother to make up for it. And me. I was just an inconvenient reminder of my dad's previous life, of a time before Nancy was the queen of the castle. I was competition for my dad's attention and affection, and Nancy wasn't going to let that happen. I printed out some of the articles, the most damning ones, the ones where Nancy's accusations against Mark were detailed, and where Mark gave his side of the story, which was completely different from Nancy's narrative. He claimed Nancy was manipulative and controlling, and that she was using Alexis as a pawn in their divorce. He even alleged that Nancy had fabricated the abuse allegations to gain an advantage in the custody battle. Reading his words, it resonated with me so much. It sounded exactly like the Nancy I had come to know. I knew I had to show my dad. This was too big to ignore. But I was also terrified. What if he didn't believe me? What if he got angry at me for snooping into Nancy's past? What if this blew up our family completely? But I couldn't stay silent anymore. I deserved to be treated with respect in my own home. And frankly, my dad deserved to know who he had really married. I waited until Dad and Nancy were both home that evening. They were in the living room, watching TV. Alexis was upstairs doing homework or whatever teenagers do. I took a deep breath, walked into the living room, and held out the printed articles to my dad. "Dad," I said, "there's something you need to see." He looked at me, confused. "What is this, Oliver?" he asked, taking the papers from me. "Just read it, Dad," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "It's about Nancy, about her past." He frowned, looked at Nancy, who was now staring at me with a mixture of curiosity and annoyance. He started reading. I watched his face as he went through the articles. His eyebrows furrowed, his lips tightened, and his color slowly drained away. Nancy kept asking him what was going on, but he just waved her away, his eyes glued to the papers. When he finished reading, he looked up at me, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. "Oliver, where did you get this?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I found it online," I said. I was trying to understand why Nancy treats me the way she does, why she favors Alexis so much. And I found this. It's about her divorce. About Alexis's dad. My dad looked at Nancy, then back at the articles, then back at Nancy again. Nancy, what is this? He asked, his voice now firmer but still tinged with disbelief. Nancy's face had gone pale. She stood up, her eyes darting between me and my dad. She tried to laugh, a nervous, shaky laugh. "Oh, honey," she said to my dad, "don't be ridiculous. This is old news. This is just my ex-husband was bitter. He made up all sorts of lies. You know how messy divorces can be, but Dad wasn't buying it." "Nancy, this says you accused Mark of emotional abuse," he said, his voice rising. "You said he was emotionally damaging Alexis. Is that true?" Nancy hesitated. She looked at me, her eyes filled with anger and something else, fear. "Oliver, why are you doing this?" she hissed at me. "Are you trying to cause trouble?" "No," I said, standing my ground. "I just want the truth. Dad deserves to know the truth. We both do." Dad was still looking at Nancy, waiting for an answer. "Nancy, is it true?" He repeated, his voice now hard. "Did you lie about Mark to get custody of Alexis?" Nancy's shoulders slumped. She let out a long, defeated sigh. "Okay, fine," she said, her voice barely audible. Maybe I exaggerated a little. Divorces are messy, Richard. You don't understand. He was making things so difficult. I just wanted to protect Alexis." "Exaggerated a little," Dad exploded, finally losing his temper. "Exaggerated a little. Nancy, you accused him of emotional abuse. You painted him as a monster, and you used Alexis to do it. Is that what you're saying?" Nancy started to cry. "Richard, please," she sobbed. "Don't do this. It was years ago. It's in the past. It has nothing to do with us now." "No," Dad said, his voice cold. "It has everything to do with us now, everything. You lied to get custody of Alexis. You lied to everyone, and you've been treating Oliver like dirt ever since we got married. Because of this, because of your past." Nancy didn't answer. She just stood there crying, her face buried in her hands. Dad looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger, hurt, and apology. "Oliver, I am so sorry," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I had no idea. I should have listened to you. I should have seen what was going on." I just nodded, tears welling up in my own eyes. It was all finally out in the open. The truth was out, and it was ugly and painful, but it was finally out. And in a strange way, that felt good, relieving. That night was rough. Dad and Nancy had a huge fight, yelling, crying, the whole 9 yards. Alexis came downstairs, confused and scared, and Nancy immediately went into mother hen mode, comforting her, telling her everything was okay, even though it clearly wasn't. Dad and I just kind of retreated to our respective rooms, leaving Nancy to deal with Alexis. The next few days were awkward, to say the least. Nancy was walking around the house like a ghost, pale and silent. Dad was distant and preoccupied. Alexis was confused and kept asking what was going on, but Nancy just kept telling her it was grown-up stuff and not to worry about it. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, but also vindicated. I had been right all along. Nancy wasn't just a slightly biased stepmom. She was manipulative and possibly even, well, I didn't even want to think about what else she might be capable of. Then a couple of days later, Dad came to my room. "Oliver, can we talk?" he asked, his voice quiet. "Sure, Dad," I said, putting down my book. He sat down on the edge of my bed. "Oliver, I want to apologize," he said, looking me straight in the eye. "I have been a terrible father to you these past few years. I have been blind to what was going on with Nancy. I let her treat you unfairly, and I did nothing to stop it. And for that, I am truly sorry." "Dad, it's okay," I started to say, but he cut me off. "No, it's not okay," he said. "It's not okay at all. You are my son, Oliver. You are important to me, and I have let Nancy's issues cloud my judgment. I should have listened to you. I should have trusted you, and I didn't. And I am so sorry." He reached out and put his hand on my shoulder. "Oliver," he said, "I am going to make things right, I promise you. Things are going to change around here." And you know what? He meant it. Things did change, and they changed fast. Update 1. Wow, Reddit, the response to my original post was incredible. Thank you all so much for your support and validation. I was honestly expecting maybe a few comments, but the outpouring of advice and sympathy has been overwhelming. And yes, many of you were right. Things have escalated, and things are definitely changing. First of all, thank you to everyone who suggested therapy, both for me and for my dad. We are actually looking into it now. Dad and I had a long talk after he apologized, and we agreed that we both needed to work through some things. He feels guilty for not seeing what was happening sooner, and I have years of resentment to unpack. So therapy is definitely on the table. As for Nancy, well, things are complicated. Dad and Nancy have been sleeping in separate rooms since the big reveal. There have been a lot of tense conversations and a lot of tears, mostly from Nancy. She is still trying to downplay everything, saying I blew things out of proportion and that it was all in the past, and that I am trying to ruin her marriage. But Dad is not backing down. He is finally seeing Nancy for who she really is, or at least, for who she has presented herself to be in the past. He confronted her about the favoritism towards Alexis. He pointed out all the ways she has treated me differently, the gifts, the chores, the attention, everything. And Nancy predictably denied it at first. She said she loves us both equally and that I am just imagining things, but Dad was prepared. He had been paying attention finally. He gave her specific examples, dates, times, everything documented in his mind, I guess. And Nancy couldn't deny it anymore. She started crying again and said it was because Alexis had a difficult childhood and that she was just trying to make up for it. But Dad didn't let her off the hook. He said that no matter what Alexis had gone through in the past, it didn't give her the right to treat me unfairly now, and he said that he would not tolerate it anymore. The biggest development, though, is about Alexis. Dad decided that he needed to talk to Alexis about everything. He wanted to be honest with her, but also protect her as much as possible. He sat her down and explained, in age-appropriate terms, about Nancy's divorce and the custody battle. He didn't go into all the graphic details, but he told her that Nancy had said some untrue things about her father to get custody. He told her that her father, Mark, might not be the bad person Nancy had made him out to be. Alexis's reaction was interesting. She was initially shocked and confused. She has always believed Nancy's version of the story, that her father was a bad man who abandoned them. But as Dad explained things and showed her some of the articles, Dad was careful about which ones he showed her, she started to question things. She asked a lot of questions, mostly about her dad, Mark. She wanted to know what he was like, why he wasn't in her life, if he ever tried to contact her. Dad admitted that he didn't know much about Mark, but he promised Alexis that he would help her find out more if she wanted to. And Alexis said yes, she wants to know about her dad. She wants to know the truth. She wants to know if maybe, just maybe, she has been missing out on a relationship with her father all these years because of Nancy's lies. This is huge, Reddit. This is potentially life-changing for Alexis. And honestly, for all of us. The dynamic in our house is already shifting. Dad is being more present, more involved in both our lives. He is making an effort to spend time with me, to talk to me, to actually listen to me. It's like the fog has lifted, and he is finally seeing me again. And Alexis is starting to see Nancy in a different light. She is still loyal to her mom, obviously, but I can see the questions in her eyes. She is starting to realize that maybe Nancy isn't as perfect as she always thought she was. Nancy, on the other hand, is not happy about any of this. She is furious at me for digging up her past, and she is furious at Dad for believing me. She is trying to control the narrative, to manipulate Alexis, to turn us all against each other. But it's not working. The truth is out, and it's like a crack in the dam. The water is starting to flow, and Nancy can't stop it anymore. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Dad and Nancy will stay together. I don't know if Alexis will try to reconnect with her father. But I do know that things are changing, and for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful. I feel like maybe, just maybe, I can finally have a real relationship with my dad. And maybe, just maybe, Alexis can finally have a real relationship with her father too. And maybe, just maybe, Nancy will finally have to face the consequences of her actions. Thank you again for all your support, Reddit. I will keep you updated. Thoughts, update 2. Okay, Reddit, you guys are seriously the best. I never expected my story to blow up like this, and I am so grateful for all the advice, support, and even the tough love some of you gave me. It really helped me process everything and stay strong. And guess what? Things have progressed even further and in ways I never anticipated. First, Alexis. After talking to Dad, she was really determined to find her father, Mark. Dad helped her, of course. He did some online searching, and surprisingly, Mark wasn't that hard to find. He is still living in the same general area, just a few towns over. He has a social media presence and even a public phone number listed online. Alexis was hesitant at first, nervous about reaching out, but Dad encouraged her to take the leap. So she did. She sent Mark a message online, a simple, heartfelt message introducing herself and saying that she was his daughter, Alexis. She didn't know what to expect, but within hours, Mark replied. And Reddit, you're going to cry when you hear this. I almost did. His reply was so incredibly emotional and full of love. He said he had never stopped thinking about her, that he had tried to find her over the years but hadn't been able to, and that he was overjoyed to finally hear from her. He said he would love to meet her, anytime, anywhere. Alexis was in tears reading his message. Happy tears for the first time in a long time, I think. She showed it to Dad and me, and we were both choked up. Dad helped her arrange a meeting with Mark. They decided to meet at a neutral place, a coffee shop, just the two of them at first. Dad offered to go with her, but Alexis wanted to do it on her own. She is a brave girl, my stepsister, I will give her that. The meeting happened a few days ago, and it was amazing. Alexis came home beaming. She said it was like meeting a part of herself she never knew existed. She said Mark was kind and funny and genuinely interested in getting to know her. He told her his side of the story about the divorce, about Nancy's accusations, about how much he had missed her. He showed her pictures of her when she was little, pictures Nancy had apparently hidden from Alexis. Alexis said she felt an instant connection with him, like they were always meant to be in each other's lives. They have been talking and texting nonstop since then. They are planning another meeting soon, maybe to go to a movie or something. Alexis is like a different person. She is happier, more confident, more whole. It's incredible to witness. And Mark is just over the moon. He is finally getting a second chance to be a father to his daughter, and he is not taking it for granted. As for Nancy, well, she is losing it. She found out about Alexis contacting Mark, and she went ballistic. She accused Alexis of betraying her, of being ungrateful, of falling for Mark's lies. She tried to forbid Alexis from seeing him again, but Alexis stood up to her. For the first time, I think, Alexis truly stood up to Nancy. She told Nancy that she deserved to know her father, that Nancy had no right to keep them apart, and that she was going to see Mark whether Nancy liked it or not. Nancy then turned her anger on Dad. She accused him of siding with me and Alexis against her, of ruining their family, of believing lies over his own wife. She threatened to leave, to take Alexis with her, to make our lives miserable. But Dad didn't back down. He told Nancy that he was done with her manipulation and lies. He said he was not going to stand by and watch her control Alexis's life anymore. He said he was seriously reconsidering their marriage. And then something happened that I still can't quite believe. Nancy moved out. She packed a bag, took Alexis with her and left, just like that. No dramatic goodbye, no tearful farewell, just gone. Alexis came back a few hours later, though. She told Nancy she was going back to Dad's house, that she wanted to stay with Dad and me, and that she was going to continue to see her father, Mark. Nancy apparently tried to argue with her, but Alexis was firm. She's choosing her own path now. So right now it's just Dad, Alexis, and me in the house. And it's peaceful, calm, normal. It's like a weight has been lifted. The tension is gone, the favoritism is gone, the constant undercurrent of anxiety is gone. We are just a family. A slightly unconventional family maybe, but a family nonetheless. Dad is happier than I have seen him in years. Alexis is thriving, and I finally feel like I belong here, like I am valued and loved. I don't know what the future holds for Nancy, or for Dad and Nancy's marriage. Honestly, I don't think Dad wants her back, not after everything that has come to light. And I don't think I want her back either. Life is so much better without the drama and the manipulation. What I have learned from all of this, Reddit, is that truth will always come out in the end. And that family is not just about blood, it's about love and trust and respect. And that sometimes the hardest truths are the ones that set you free. Thank you again for listening to my story. You guys are amazing. And if anyone is dealing with stepfamily issues or favoritism, please know that you are not alone. Stand up for yourself, speak your truth, and don't let anyone dim your light. You deserve to be seen and heard and loved just as you are. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.